I went into Eileen completely blind. I'd never seen a trailer or even read a synopsis. All I knew is that it starred Thomasin McKenzie, Anne Hathaway, and Shea Whigham. So how was it? The stagnant waters of Eileen's dull, stifled life as a solitary worker at a juvenile detention center are unexpectedly disrupted when the institution brings in a new psychologist, the vibrant Rebecca. The fervent enthusiasm that blossoms between the two women almost immediately gives way to a closer relationship, until their fragile connection takes a dramatic turn. Okay, so this is based on the novel by Ottessa Moshfegh, and I've not read it, so I don't know how close this may stick to the source material. We got Thomasin McKenzie in the title role of Eileen, and she's a young woman with a pretty depressing home life, and her day-to-day existence seems mundane and repetitive. She's meek and quiet, but also longs for more than what her current circumstances provides. Now, McKenzie is great in the role because her voice and dialogue delivery come across as younger and naive than she actually is. Some of that, I think, is just how she actually acts, because in several of McKenzie's roles, she has a similar persona that plays up innocence. Now, when Anne Hathaway's character of Rebecca shows up as a new staff member where Eileen works, a small infatuation begins, mixed with a tiny bit of mystery. Now, Hathaway plays the character as aloof and alluring. She's flirty, but also confident, and this works to disarm just about any character that she comes in contact with. Now, there's a large portion of the story that just builds the character of Eileen. It's effective in conveying her mental state, as well as all that she endures at work and home, and how that contributes to how she views and deals with the world. She's somewhat sympathetic, but not totally, and she's presented as a semi-unreliable narrator, thanks to some visuals we're shown throughout the story. Now, I like the amount of time that we spend getting to know the character, and the way it's delivered creates depth and nuance to her inner workings. Now, there's a portion of the story, and mainly it's at the very beginning, it feels very out of place and inconsistent for other parts of the movie. We see a character who is almost compulsive or maybe obsessive when it comes to self-love. Now, they even do risky behavior where they could be caught enjoying themselves. We're shown 2 instances of this, and while it was mildly shocking at first, my problem isn't that it exists in the story, but that it's never addressed again. Now, in one sense, it can fit perfectly with the character's persona. But when some other situations arise where some alone time would actually be a very natural outcome, it doesn't happen at all. And the inconsistency with this behavior for the character felt very out of place, and then made the initial scenes seem more like they were included for shock value rather than for any story development. Now, I was unsettled through a lot of this movie because I had no idea of where the story was headed and what type of narrative that it was going to turn out to be. Was this a love story? Was it just a character study? Or maybe was it a thriller? Now, I liked the ambiguity because it helped to set up a moment when I literally laughed out loud from surprise. I was absolutely not expecting the outcome of a conversation, and I thought it was cleverly introduced and delivered. But because of when this surprise occurs, the ending of the film feels extremely rushed and wrapped up in a pretty unsatisfying way. Right after the movie, I was talking with my family, and we all loved it right up until the end. There's so much buildup for tension and discomfort to then have the conclusion arrive less than 10 minutes after a huge plot reveal. It just dive-bombed the final result. The movie's pretty short at just 97 minutes. I think it would be better served to have an extra 10 or 15 minutes to lengthen that ending and then create one that's deserving of all that came before. And the suspense that comes before, it's wonderfully created. For all that we see about Eileen and then can understand her present emotions, she's also a stranger to it, with pieces of her past just slowly doled out. Then Rebecca, she is a complete mystery to us, and to Eileen. And because we're watching this kind of from the perspective of Eileen, we know just as much as she does about her new coworker. So we're all discovering things together at the same time. Now, this is great for the intrigue of the story, and it adds a large layer of unease, even mistrust. Now, I was fully on board for this as well, thanks to the performances by both leading ladies. They're enigmatic, mischievous, and even though I thought I knew where the relationship was headed, I enjoyed being wrong about the outcome. Now, as I sat with the movie, more little things began to pop into my mind. Individually, they're not really huge deals, but when they're all combined, it does begin to detract a little from the overall engagement. So, for example, the story takes place in the 60s. Some lines of dialogue, though, felt way more at home in the present. Eileen responds to her father with, "Whatever, Dad," and it just screams something more modern with the way that it was delivered. And I know it's small. Then there are some interactions and behaviors between Eileen and Rebecca that wouldn't fit within the established era, or be as accepted and or ignored by the public. And one final example comes at the movie's finale. A character has knowledge and background that is 100% contrary to some actions that they carry out. And this character performs several actions that just don't feel legitimate based on everything that we're shown with that character. And okay, I do know that the last two examples have been very, very vague, but they do contain spoilers if I went into detail. And again, by themselves, these aren't things that are really detrimental to the film, but when the inconsistencies in characters or time are combined, they do show some weaknesses in the storytelling. So overall, Eileen effectively builds out unease and suspense through dynamic and captivating performances from Thomasin McKenzie and Anne Hathaway. While not all behaviors are necessarily consistent with the era of the story, the mystery and somber tone help to overshadow minor issues. The character development and world building are detailed and engaging, but the film is rushed at the end, creating an abrupt and stunted resolution that's inconsistent with what came before. There's sex, no nudity, a lot of profanity, and some brutal violence. I give Eileen 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what are you watching right now? Anything exceptional that you could recommend to me in the comments below? If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.